of the time. So I just had to say that.
Very nice, yeah.
John, where are you located? I'm in St. Louis.
Oh, I'm in the Bay Area, California.
Okay. Hi, Richard.
Hello, Richard. Well, I don't have any agenda or anything tonight, so we'll have to see what anyone wants to talk about.
Well, I proposed on Facebook that one thing we could talk about is that whole issue of what you and Paul Smith and others were discussing about CRV, and also extensions of that. But
okay.
If people want to talk about other things, that's perfectly fine with me.
I'm sure that'd be a good start. We got a bit of time, a few hours or however long we're here. Everyone's starting to turn up.
Yeah, Deborah Rose has a cat there, huh? Okay.
We can definitely talk about the CRV thing, especially ideograms and stuff. I know it's controversial with, the argument and everything.
I thought I'd go to the beach. I hope nobody minds.
Very nice.
You can all do that.
Yeah.
Through Zoom. If you go down to stop video at the bottom of your screen, there's a little arrow.
Yeah.
And if you press on it, it says choose virtual background.
Okay.
There's not a lot of great choices, but the beach is one of the best ones.
Right.
Well, the fun thing is you can download your own backgrounds.
Yeah.
It does depend on what.
Yeah.
Yeah. You can. If you're on a computer, you can. It depends on your computer's hardware, though. It's got to have a certain amount of something to be able to do it.
Yeah. The Star Wars people released a pack of Star Wars backgrounds a couple of days ago. They're good.
There we go. Might as well.
Absolutely, John.
Just letting a few more people in.
Oh, there's Alexis. Okay.
Is that Alexis Poclis?
Probably. I'm not sure, actually.
How's things over in the US at the moment with the virus and everything?
Pretty frightening.
Yeah, same here. Yeah.
Oh yeah, where are you in California?
I'm in the UK.
Oh no, I mean there's another guy there that's in California. I know where you are.
Yeah, John.
Yeah. I'm in Pennsylvania myself, central Pennsylvania.
Okay, so you're a little bit away from it. I'm in Connecticut, so I'm kind of still up to my elbows in it.
And I hope none of you are going to inject yourself with bleach, as suggested.
I was going to say something, Daz, and then I didn't want to get political, but yeah.
Oh, my God.
I've been thinking about it. I got the Drano sitting on the counter.
Oh, it's just...
you did it, now what?
It's just unbelievable, isn't it? It's a shame that we're having this at 10 o'clock, because even though I'm in the UK, 10 o'clock every night, I log on just to see what the guy's going to say next, because it's just unbelievable.
Mm-hmm.
I have people still defending it.
On Facebook, I saw someone on Facebook saying that it was taken out of context. Right. So in fairness, I'm going to look at the whole conference and see.
Yeah, I don't think it could have been, because today on pretty much every news station around the world, they were all saying, don't inject yourself with bleach.
Did you see that poor doctor's face?
But why don't why don't they say anything? I'd be, they've taken a Hippocratic oath. Why aren't they saying?
I watched somebody sell. We watched somebody sell their soul today. That's what we saw. I was like, Dear God, you've gone all the way over to the other side now. It's over.
If I was a doctor on stage with him, I'd look at him and go, in front of the cameras, and go, shut up, you're a loony. But no one is. Crazy
I
times.
don't know why they're going to put him away.
And he's going to get re-elected again by the looks of it as well.
Stop saying that. Stop saying that. Listen, I don't suppose anybody looked to see what the Senate was going to do.
I've ran 2 RV projects, and both our RV projects said that he's going to be re-elected.
I believe that he'll be reelected, but I also think that the Senate, if we can get a Democratic Senate, then he won't stay elected. The way that it works.
Wait, so how do you figure that? If we get a Democratic Senate, they'll impeach him out of there?
Oh, absolutely. Within it, your head will spin. It's the way that it's organized. The Democrats don't want him in there, and the Republicans do, and so the Senate's the one that can impeach him, and they're only 3 seats away.
So which Alexis are you there from Facebook? Is that Alexis Poe Quiz or another Alexis?
Another Alexis.
Okay, thank you.
If anyone
All
wants
right.
to ask any questions, they can at any time. Or if you don't want to, if you don't want to speak, there's always the chat window. You can try to put a question there, and anyone that's here can answer it.
I'll throw out a quick explanation. Sorry, Alexis. I assumed it was the Alexis Poquez. So when I put that comment up there, it was for him.
No, I wish I was a cooler Alexis, but just me.
What's the time? It's a few minutes past 10, so we could just start if anyone wants. As I said to a couple of people earlier who are in first, I don't really have an agenda for this evening. I didn't think of anything that we'd want to discuss. So if anyone wants, got any questions or any topics or anything they'd want to discuss, let's just go with the flow of it, really. See what you think.
Hi, Daz. Can I ask a quick question? I just watched your crypto viewing Munchie target, and that was really weird about what all 3 of you guys got. Could you explain that a bit more, or is that because it's a crypto viewing target, we can't really discuss it here because it's a Patreon thing?
Which target? Sorry.
The latest, the Munchie Minuchkin, the one you guys just released today, about an hour ago or so.
I don't know what one that is.
That's the one where you guys picked up like energy waves being transmitted. Dick got ships being shepherded in space. It was to do with why Mnuchin is, who put him in place, and why did he get that CEO of Coinbase to be in charge?
Sorry.
Yeah.
To be honest, what happens is, see, with crypto viewing is I do like 3 or 4 targets a week, and I do other targets for other people as well. So for me, the targets just become one big blur.
Yeah.
And that one's a bit of a blur, to be honest. I can't remember anything about it.
It was really weird. It was ominous, sort of. It was like some kind of, ELF waves or something like that being transmitted.
I don't think. Did I pick up data like that? I thought Dick might have picked up data.
Dick got that. Edward got something like that. Your data was a bit different, but your ideogram had that big dark line with the negative energy in it and stuff. So
okay, yeah, I vaguely remember that now.
Yeah.
Hang on, let me just see if I can call up the session a second.
Okay.
So that was probably going to be in April, I would assume.
Yeah. It's just been released about an hour ago or so on Patreon.
I know it sounds strange, but I don't even have, even though I do the work, I don't even myself have access to all the files.
Okay.
And because crypto viewing is run by a production team now, there's literally I think 12, 14 people or more. So there's like editors, video editors, and content editors and stuff. Once I've done the RV, I don't, and you know, they disclose it to me and I do my video. I tend not to. I tend not to see anything and know about when it's getting released or anything.
Yeah.
I'm just having a look at my sessions here. I got one negative one. I don't know if it's this. If I show my screen, you'll have to. Sorry, you might have to tell me if it's what you saw in the video.
Okay.
So let me just open it up, and then I can have a look at it a little bit here. Let's move the chat window. Was this one of the sessions?
No. Oh, actually, yeah. This might be it. Yeah.
With some kind of because we all had transmitting devices, didn't we?
That's it. Yeah, this is the one. Yeah.
Yeah, I had all this.
This is the one.
Let me just admit these people a minute. I had all this very strange. I vaguely remember now. We all had dark data. I had it all around a central person, because the first remote viewing I did on it here was all about a person, and a person who likes to be in a crowded environment at a lectern giving talks. Let's have him get someone else in. And then it was a future situation with lots of energy. Yeah, because I had this dark ideogram here with lots of dark negative energy. What's this here? A person, mentally unstable, doing lots of decision making, upset, feels like a person confused and separated, someone having, some kind of problems. And then I said I didn't feel like I was on focus, so I tried to reiterate with a new ideogram here, and I got all this energy waves, emotional and energy waves, and the target's future based. And then I went to a second one. So a central life form engulfed in dark energy. So for me, that's usually energy that means some kind of bad mental state, depression, having a breakdown, that kind of stuff. And that's what this was, all this dark, oppressive, cloudy energy that was impeding and clouding someone's judgment, and it was negative energy. And I felt like they were on a downward spiral. Their state of mind was spiraling downwards, and they were getting to become depressive. And I felt that this was central around the life. So this depressive energy was focused around a life form, a male life form, and making his decisions fuzzy. That's it. I remember the RV now. It's coming back to me. So I tried to track that back, this depression, and to see what was causing it. I felt that it was some kind of like radiating waves that was external. And then I followed that and tracked it. And then I picked up this, that almost looked like some kind of transmitting box that was doing something to impede this person's judgment.
Wow.
And then I tried to find it a bit further, and I found that it was roaming. So I felt like it was actually mobile, when it was almost like it was in a van or something that was actually moving and following. And I felt like there might be a Russian connection to it, but that's an AOL there. And then I followed it a bit more and found that there's it was enclosed in a dark environment, which had computer servers on each side of it. So it's some kind of transmitting device. And I'll tell you what my RV felt like on this. Mine felt like I'd read some stories about a year ago about some people in an embassy. I can't remember where the embassy is, but they were it was an American embassy, and all the people in it were getting sick. They were getting these weird things happening with their heads.
Cuba.
Sorry?
Cuba.
It might be Cuba, yeah. And there were some kind of allegations that they were being affected in some way by some kind of device. I had the same feeling that something's going on with this, and I think Dick and Edward also picked up on some kind of device, but their device was more above in the sky, wasn't it? It was doing something a bit negative. But that's all I know on it, really.
Wow. Okay. Thank you.
Yeah, no worries. So hello everyone, hello all the new ones that's in. So we've got 25 people in at the moment. If anyone wants to ask a question or anything, 'cause there's no agenda, you know, and anyone can freely speak on any remote viewing topic, feel free to just, you know, say something over the mic, or if you're a bit shy and you don't want to, there's always the chat window where you can ask a question as well, which I've lost in a minute. Ah, there it is there.
I want to say something real quick to JJ. I saw your message. So Daz is going to arrange a special hosted thing where we'll address those questions that you had. And then if that doesn't satisfy it, I'll still have a private chat with you. Okay, JJ? Did she hear me? JJ? Oh, well, okay. I wanted to ask, I'm not sure how to pronounce your name, Zishan?
Yeah.
Which one?
I'm wanting to join the crypto viewing thing to see like the woo-woo type session. So I'm looking at the three levels of membership, and the middle one says something like you only get 2 sessions. I didn't really understand what that meant. So if I want to, I'm not interested in cryptocurrency at this time, but I am interested in these current event sessions. Which one should I join?
You should go for the visionaries, the middle tier. It's about $38, and that covers everything. I mean, it's a good mix of the cryptocurrency and the woo-woo stuff. Okay. So it's not, the thing is that with the crypto viewing, it's not just RV, it's analysis of current events, world events,
right?
Woo-woo stuff, everything. And there's you know, interviews with like insiders, analysts, and stuff like that. So it's a really good thing to join up, even if you're not interested in cryptocurrency and stuff, just to get information on what's happening with the world. So the visionaries is about $38. Something like that.
That's the top tier, as I read it.
No, that's the middle tier. I think the top tier, you can have private RV sessions as well once a month. I think Daz will probably clear it up for me.
I think so, and I think we have we invite some people along to have private chats and stuff like that as well, private meetings and that. Yeah.
Okay, so I'm confused because the way, let me just look at my thing real quick here. Okay.
What I could do, Russell, is I could get Ed, the guy that runs it, the back office, to email you and help you out. Because I got to be honest, I don't know. I have nothing to do with, other than doing the RV and helping out on a few questions to message boards and stuff. I have no access to any of what's going on there.
Okay,
so Russell,
I thought the lowest one was like 9 something a month. The middle one was 19 something, and then the next one was 38. I didn't see a fourth one.
I think when I joined up, there was a fourth one, which was private sessions and private chats with the guys and the crypto viewing guys. But you're better off going to their website now, because they're moving everyone away from Patreon onto a private site. So you'll only have to join up twice. Let me dig the link out. I can send it to you. You can sign up, and then you can send a message to the guys there, and they'll sort you out. You pay by PayPal or whatever it is. So
I've got the crypto viewing new website up.
Okay.
And I don't see anywhere where it talks about pricing or joining.
I don't think the pricing's on there. Let me try and find it for you. I'll send you a private message.
Okay, that would be awesome. I'd appreciate. I just want to make the right decision the first time.
Yeah, sure. I'll send you a private message, and you can sign up from there. Let me dig it out for you. Okay.
Great. Right. Thank you.
Yeah, sorry, I can't help. I'm not involved in any part of that. And as I said just now, I don't even get to see myself the videos and stuff, because you got even though I'm involved, I haven't had access to it yet without paying quite a bit of money, and I just can't afford to do it myself.
Mark Anthony had a really interesting question the other day about remote viewers unwittingly changing timelines through interactions. and also the discussion about people reporting being seen or sensed by subjects. So I just thought that was interesting. Maybe something people want to discuss.
Well, we've had quite a few debates about this on Facebook. Myself and Russell and a few of the others. Changing the time. I mean, I don't know about. I mean, it's a hard one because we know that as a remote viewer, you can affect things it targets. You know, because I've done a target myself working with Andrew Usher here in the UK, where he sent me an RV target, but the main focus at the same time was to try to affect a random number generator, and he was in Scotland, so that's about 400 miles away from me. And at the time I did it, the random number generator did go off kilter, and it wasn't going random anymore. So we do know, and you know, there are many other anecdotal stories and effects that have been recorded that remote viewers can affect things. I'm not sure if that happens every time they RV though, unless the intent is there maybe to make an effect. But I don't know if you can affect things in the past. I'm not sure on that. I mean, just by doing RV, you know, just by looking at the future, I think we probably changed the future in some way, which is a quote from a film called Next with Nicolas Cage. I think that happens, and you know, the mere fact that like what we do in crypto viewing is we always we try to predict like what's going to happen in the top news stories for the next month. So, you know, in March I did April's. And I got 8, and pretty much every month, you know, I usually get about 10 a month. For the last 2 years, I would say I'm running an 80+% accuracy rating for those every single month. So you know, we predict that stuff in advance, and that seems to be okay. But because we put out the information weeks before the event happens, it's quite possible that people are viewing that information and then acting upon the information and then literally changing the future in some way by acting upon it. So that's a possibility that might be happening because of remote viewing.
Daz, could you say again what you got 8 out of 10 correct on? I didn't catch that.
Yeah, each month we do we do predictions. For example, let me show you some. It's easier if I just show you some. Bear with me a second here while I open them up. 220 predictions, April. So here's one. I don't know if you can see it really. I can make this bigger. Yeah. No. Yeah. So this was just a prediction. So these are predictions that were made in March for news that were going to happen in April. So this was one about someone being angry and like, you know, I had an impression it was Trump in a but you know, anyone could predict some of this stuff, to be honest. And having a big media confrontation which goes viral and all that kind of stuff. So that was one. Another one from April would be that I kept seeing all these in March's RV session. I kept seeing all these charts showing market charts, but all the charts were down. They were below the mark. They were really down. And of course, we had the oil crash. I also said that Bitcoin was going to go up. It was going to have a bounce in April, and I think today it's gone up even more. I think it was at 7,600 today. And last month it went down as low as 3,000 something because of the crash and stuff. So that happened this month so far. I think there was another Trump one here. Yeah, trigger point event or something. And another one here. Oh yeah, I had all this data in March about there was going to be an angry rebellion and an uprising. And it was going to start off in cities, and it was going to be like a grassroots revolution of lots of anger and stuff. And of course, we got the people that, you know, are complaining because they want to leave their houses, that kind of stuff. And then I never get these, but I had a good news story, and I marked it down as a good news story as well in the news. And it's the first time I got a good news story. And here it is here, and I actually said this is a good feeding story in the news. And it was 2 people and I got a drawing of it. There was 2 people on top of structures, and they were communicating in some way, but there was a gap in between them. And one of our Patreons sent me this and said, look, this has gone viral, and it's two people in the lockdown, and they were on separate buildings, and they were playing tennis between the buildings. So we do things like that on a monthly basis. I usually do about 10 a month, and I would say eight plus, maybe even more than that. Sometimes I've marked all of them as accurate, but you know, I'd say on average about 80% of my predictions month on month of stuff that's going to happen the following month is becomes accurate. And we got some longer range stuff as well. Like we just put out a video, I think it's on the Facebook group, and this was from February. In February, all three of us did a remote viewing session, and it was tasked by one of the taskers, Ed, within crypto viewing, and it was to look at the May is it the May Day celebration parade or something in New York. So we did this in February, and all three of us looking at our RVDs, and none of us had any May Day parade information whatsoever. So we were all reviewing this data with the target group, and well, what the hell's going on here? This is a bit strange. And this was before any of the lockdowns were in effect and stuff. So we could only conclude at the end of that night, you know, because coronavirus literally just started a little bit then, that we could only conclude at the end of the night, at that night in February, that there was going to be mass lockdowns, because that's what the data indicated, and that none of the the May Day parade wasn't going to go ahead. And we only just heard this week that it's penciled in to be cancelled at the moment. So we do occasional stuff like that as well, and we have done more of those kind of things. And in fact, in June of last year, we started doing RV sessions looking at locations in the US in the near future, and we were getting some really strange data. Because the events that were the targets, they just weren't happening, and we were getting this really strange, dubious data about people bugging out, moving, queues of people doing strange stuff. And this was in June last year, and of course at the time I don't think we published much of the data, because we were like thinking to ourselves, well, this is so strange, what's going on here? This is indicating some kind of big event's going to happen, but we don't exactly know what this big event's going to be. So we were getting that from June onwards last year as well, which was quite interesting. Yes, it was the Memorial Day Parade, JJ.
I do have a question for the group as a whole. I'm not sure if you can hear me okay.
Yeah.
How many people have found their way into remote viewing through or from the origin of a UFO background?
Anyone want to answer that?
Not many people in the group, by the sound of it.
I did. I started I started in psychic work, then went into UFOs, and then moved into remote viewing after the UFO stuff. But the UFO stuff and the remote viewing went side by side for a decade.
Yeah.
I've been surprised at how many people come to the training that have UFO and extraterrestrial and all that sort of experiences. It's very usual.
You do training yourself, Julie, is that right?
Yes, I do. Yeah.
Right, okay. And you're north of England? North
Midlands.
Midland, okay.
Well,
Right.
Midlands and Midlands and Scotland, actually, because I co-teach with Stella. So, yeah, we do between the two venues.
Okay. I'm far west, actually further southwest than you, Daz. I'm far southwest, not far from Land's End.
Very nice.
Very end of Cornwall.
Usually packed this time of year, but not at the moment.
Well, yeah, we're quite lucky here because I've got the cliffs I can walk around on, and that's pretty good. I'm blessed.
But it's lovely when we do the training that people feel they can actually share their stuff that they can't share in a lot of other places.
Yeah.
And we honour that. Yeah.
The reason I've asked it, I see it a lot in discussions where the UFO topic comes up a hell of a lot, and it's sometimes referred to as a woo-woo subject. But I'm just very, very curious how many people have got some form of experience or interest in UFOs, which through whatever sort of twisty, windy way ended up leading them down the remote viewing tracks. I know that's where I came from. And Courtney Brown
But
is responsible in that sense.
It almost becomes not woo. Well, it does become not woo-woo, and it just is everyday life, and accepting it as everyday life makes it easier for people. But then what do you do when you go out there with other people that aren't used to it?
Don't probe them; they'll probably take offence to that.
Well, it's let them share during the training, but then help them to accommodate once they get out in there with the rest of the public. Yeah.
Absolutely.
I got into it through the C5 Stephen Greer's work. I don't know if you're familiar with that.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think at the time I watched his first documentary, the Serious documentary, and I was kind of playing around with the protocols that he was at, and from there I started to look into the remote viewing. From there I came across Dames and came across Daz's Facebook group, and that was back in 2016.
Yeah.
But that's how I got involved in it. I think Stephen Greer's version of remote viewing is very different take on it, but it was kind of a starting point, you know.
Yeah.
I have a question for Daz. So Daz, have you seen his new movie, Stephen Greer? Have you seen the new movie?
I haven't yet. It's on my to-do list. It's just paying for it. So I will get around to it. But I haven't yet.
I wonder how many of you have seen it yet, and what do you think about his suggestion to peacefully start communicating with?
Well, I've been involved in it since 2016, and I got the application, the phone application for, you know, using the protocols and the meditations, and I definitely had experiences. Not last year, the year before. It was summer last year here wasn't great. It was very overcast. The sky wasn't great, but the previous summer was very good, clear skies, and definitely seen. I got, you know, the clips he shows with the kind of, you know, the kind of lights across the sky, but the kind of power ups with the kind of flash. I definitely had seen quite a few within that summer, but I haven't seen them since. So I don't know, you know. I mean, it's very hard to tell. I mean, I haven't had any negative or bad experience with it, so I can't say. It's probably different for other people, you know. But,
Sheila, are you in the remote viewing Facebook pages?
Yes, I am.
Are you in both Daz's group and the other one?
What's the other one? I know I'm in Daz's group.
The other one is just plain remote viewing. I think if you Google, or if not Google, but Facebook search plain remote viewing, it's the one that comes up with like 10,000 members.
I think I'm in that one too. I will check right now and tell you.
Okay, because I wrote a 5 articles on my review of the film, and to be fair, and also to be respectful of those who practice that, mine is not of a particularly positive disposition, but it is just a singular point of view. So compare it with more favorable ones, and it probably is a little bit of a balance.
I will check this out, but I just want to make a comment here. I used to think that Stephen Greer was a crackpot, to tell you the truth, and the person who convinced me he wasn't was a man by the name of Paul Hillier, who was in his 90s and sharp as a tack, and was the defense minister of Canada. And when I watched his videos and the sincerity with which he talked about his experiences with Stephen Greer, I took another look at Stephen Greer, and I don't know whether Stephen Greer is a crackpot. I know that his ego precedes him, but I also know that what he's trying to do is good. So,
I mean, it's a wide spectrum thing with lots of dispositions. I've never met Stephen Greer. I don't know. I've heard some things for a couple of reasons, because of my own childhood and ongoing events involving ET. My professional practice very frequently involves helping people clear extremely negative memories of events that have occurred in their life. And then some of what Ingo's put forth, particularly in a big article, a special edition of Fate magazine on abductions. So for me, although I believe in the broadest spectrum of everything, there are going to be significantly more good beings, even neutral beings, than negative beings. I just take the disposition that Earth may, for the time being, be in a little bit of a bad neighborhood. So just like you could go to a major city, there's parks, museums, happy people, beautiful people, but if you go down to the wrong side of the tracks, you may find a concentration of beings up to what we would experience as no good. So if you just, like I said, I'm just giving you a forecast that mine is a little bit of a critical review, and generally comes from my own disposition. I think there's a couple of points in there worth considering. One primary example that I use, somebody else, Lori Williams, are you familiar with her?
Yes, she was one of my trainers.
Okay, great. So you know Lori's abilities. So Lori was challenged on Coast to Coast radio one time to do sessions blind, very bravely did them, came back to the show, said what her sessions were, and then got the feedback. So it was like kamikaze, do or die. She nailed the targets. One of the targets she did was Mount Shasta, and that whole session is posted on her blog. So you could Google, in quotes, Lori Williams, and then in quotes, Mount Shasta, and probably find it. It's in one of my articles, where what she discovered going on inside Mount Shasta did not really seem very friendly. I juxtaposed that to a Stephen Greer event at Mount Shasta, and I said, well, if what's going on in the mountain is accurate based on Lori's perception, and then people sitting there asking that into their hearts, it just brought me to a question, what's going on there? So if that more negative review interests you, you can find the articles, and I'm on any of them. I'm very open to criticism, counter opinion, whatever it is. But,
Russell, could I just have your last name or how you're listed on Facebook so I can find it easily?
Oh yeah, it's Pickering,
yeah, okay, I got it. I know you.
Pickering, or in the little search box on the side, you could just put in CE5, because I titled them all CE5 Part 1 through whatever.
Okay.
And that way, and like I said, I have no intent whatsoever to, criticize anybody in particular or any of this kind of thing, but it is an opinion, and it's opinion, based on a little bit of experience and observation.
Can I add something to this as well? But before I do, I'm going to pause the video because I don't want this recorded.
Sorry. Didn't a lot of those animal mutilations start in the 40s and 50s?
I think they go back. That's what it really hit the public in '67 onwards,
Yeah.
and it's still going on today. But there were a few scant cases recorded way back into the early 1900s.
Wow.
And we've had quite a few in the UK as well, especially when the crop circle season became really prevalent in the around 89 to I think 94. We had huge amounts of very strange things going on in the UK, and every now and again you get a wave of stuff where you look at the papers and it says things like, in London, over a period of 2 weeks, 110 cats been found with their heads cut off. So you get these really weird things happening and stuff.
There was a thread some time ago where Dr. Eric Davis, of sort of, not sure whether I'm quite sure I got this right, of Hal Puthoff fame connections, he was actually suggesting that most, if not all, of the cattle mutilations were down to military ops, and there was actually a thread in one of the remote viewing, and I was actually reading this, and I don't know.
Yeah, I'm not sure I buy that because
I don't buy that, Matt. I'm not.
Because the military got so much money that it spends on black projects and stuff. If it wanted to find, if it wanted to do studies on cows to see if they had radiation damage or something like that, it would just buy up a load of cows.
Yeah.
The entities the phenomenon that's doing this is doing it in such a way that it puts the animals back down in a way that spreads fear. It's like they want to spread fear and some kind of unknownness about it. Otherwise, anyone would if you wanted to, you could hide a cow. You wouldn't need to put it back down in the field that you took it from with all its organs missing. There's only one reason you would do that. But I don't understand the military thing. Although there are some quite solid stories of military jets being seen in the vicinity, but maybe they're like everyone else. They're just tracking it and keeping an eye on it.
Yeah, I did point that question towards Linda Moulton Howe, but I didn't hear back from her at all. But I imagine she's swamped with all sorts of messages. But it was just one of those things where he was so decisive in the way he'd actually delivered this message. And I'm guessing, Daz, you may have actually seen the thread in which that message was left. But it was almost as if to quell the whole thing, and I thought, I'm not entirely comfortable with that.
It's an interesting thing, and as I said, the human mutilation stuff. It's no serious researchers talk about it very much, but if you look under the hood, there are quite a few stories there, and if you just do some research on how many people around the world go missing each year as well, if a very 0.001% of those had anything to do with ETs or non-physical beings of any kind, then that's still hundreds of thousands of people. We don't know.
This is an interesting and fun kind of conversation here. Are you guys hearing me okay?
Yeah.
You're fine.
Well, it's good to see you guys. It's interesting. What's caught me about this discussion right now, I think it kind of started with talking about, do we think these extraterrestrials are good or bad and things like that? And it's taking into account things that we might not really understand. There are reasons for doing various things. And I liked Russell's, what he said about maybe where Earth is kind of passing through a bad neighborhood, when really Earth might be the bad neighborhood in a lot of ways. I was watching a interview that Dr. Stephen Greer was doing with all what I could only describe as frat boys. They had some big podcast show, and he was a guest on that, and as he would explain his process, and he would explain that extraterrestrials are real, and this is how you could communicate with them, and then the frat boys would say, well, are they hot? And so they would say all kinds of very shallow things like that, and it kind of left me wondering, what percentage of the population would be ready to have a proper interaction with extraterrestrials had disclosure or something like that happen?
It's a good question. I think we discussed this. Maybe I discussed it with Russell last night, because we did a Zoom on some kind of ET stuff last night, which is going to be out soon, which is an interesting project. And I was saying, I think we discussed this then, and I was saying, well, just looking at the current situation where you have, you have people demonstrating on the streets because they want their freedom when everyone's dying from a virus and stuff. Are a certain amount of the population that we're ready for contact? I don't think they are really.
Yeah, it's kind of sad, because the truth is there's a group of people who I think emotionally and maybe I'll say spiritually, but definitely people who have done their meditation and they're good at communicating with each other, and they're loving people. And I don't know that that's a very large population.
No.
It's interesting because in our groups, this topic is not an unusual thing to discuss.
Yeah.
Whereas in general public, there is when you go out into the world, we're discussing disclosure as a big, important thing. Other groups are still dealing with racism, sexism, pedophilia, and all kinds of creepy stuff like that. And so it kind of does give me the we are the bad neighborhood kind of feeling for a bit. But I don't know.
So it's a mercy. It's a mercy to be mutilated then. Like,
Oh,
you know what I mean? Like, come on, if there's a really enlightened race of like godlike alien creatures from different dimensions and they're just passing through, they could take the time to treat us gently, like you hope that we treat lesser animals on the planet, if they're really that enlightened. So why the violence? Why the mystery? Why the confusion?
But we don't treat
why all the suffering? I know we don't. So if they don't either, then maybe they're more advanced, but higher, higher life forms.
Yes.
I don't know about that. Predator.
I would agree with you. I don't know that I would say any life form is higher in that way. It's perhaps all a matter of motivations. I don't call anything higher in that way. What if, because they might not even acknowledge us as a living thing in certain ways. So you can kind of look at it from a bunch of different directions.
I think it's like that famous saying, as above, so below. And I think there's, like there is on Earth, there's, spiritual people, there's unspiritual people, there's people that would love an animal, there's people that would go out of their way to harm an animal. I think that's going to be reflected in the entire universe, and I says to people, it's not just black and white. There are beings out there that don't, just don't have any interest in us at all other than science for some reason. There are beings that do want us to progress spiritually and take a place in the universe. And there are other beings that don't see us that way. They just see us like cattle and stuff. As humans, we sometimes try to think things black and white, but I think it's very much, loads of shades of gray of it all.
Yeah. And on top of that, imagine something that is biologically nothing like us. How would it perhaps know that we're alive? Say, now just to make up stuff, say an energy being comes along and discovers physical matter and just wants to experiment with it, then there is no morality behind anything that energy being would do in that situation.
I read that comic.
I thought about this a lot over years, and if you're an intelligent alien being, race, and you got this 0 point energy, so just you're looking down on us as humans, and you're thinking, look at these crazy people. Now, what would happen if I gave them 0 point energy or the cures to every illness possible, to aging and everything else? Would they all do good with it, or would they abuse it and maybe destroy themselves? So I can see it.
Well, my question is, humans seem to scientifically dissect everything they come across that they don't know anything about, and maybe they're doing the same thing.
Yeah. That's what I think is probably happening. But us, because we see ourselves as being fully conscious beings and being spiritual, we don't like to think that we're on a lower rung than maybe someone else that might see us as we see cows.
I kind of think that they're on a little higher plane than we are as far as their abilities, and their mechanical abilities, mathematical, and so on. I think they're much higher than we are. We've got so far to go, and there's so many of us that still need to learn what it takes to be up there or try to be there. It's all we can do is strive to be better and show them that we are who we hope they would see us as.
Go ahead.
No, go ahead, John.
I was just going to tie it into the effect of some aliens on remote viewing in the group that I was in. Some of you may be familiar with it, but it involves this concept of the trickster. But as you probably know, my teacher, Prue, claimed to see a small gray dude in the bathroom, and several other viewers in the group. It was a professional group with the most successful early remote viewing group, claimed to see hammerhead aliens. Now, I never saw them, nor did Don Walker or Roma, who were other three people that I'm still in touch with. But this gray dude in particular said to Prue and John Vivanco, you know, who's still teaching, that we were going to be part of some big event. There was going to be some big event. This is back in like 2000, 2002. It was going to change the world, and we were going to have a role in that. So we did hundreds of sessions on the big event. So there was no big event that we're aware of. The group fell apart. So that's just one way of the many that UFOs and aliens have affected remote viewing.
John, I think that points to the whole phenomenon being much weirder than just, you know, super advanced scientists flying around in spaceships that we don't understand. There's a really interesting book by Whitley Strieber called The Supernatural that he wrote alongside a professor, and he speaks about phenomenon like little blue dwarfs running around, freezing time, and all kinds of things that are not explicitly tied into UFO mythology, but actually maybe follow back into mythological or folklore literature from different eras. And his conclusion is, although Strieber had become sort of a poster boy for alien contact with his book Communion in the movie, is that his conclusion is that he wasn't sure that they were aliens from another solar system or another place, but something far, far stranger that seemed to speak and contact him and reach him through dreamlike imagery to which he wasn't sure entirely what the meaning was. On the one hand, physically and sexually abusing him, and on the other hand, giving him extraordinary pleasure. Sometimes even giving him the impression these were some weird future incarnations of his own self. Now, maybe Strieber is schizophrenic to like the highest possible degree, or maybe he's right and these phenomena are weirder than just interdimensional travelers. And I think that I've heard Joe McMoneagle talk about interdimensional gnome type creatures popping in and out of his, you know, perceived physical reality too. So it goes beyond Prue and what your group had experienced for sure.
Can I make a comment here? I don't know how many of you are familiar with Bud Hopkins. He was a prominent figure in alien abduction phenomena and related UFO research. And I was privileged to have lunch with him with a group of people. This was 20 years ago. And he discussed Whitley Strieber. And frankly, the comment that I want to interject here is that he said, we don't know what happened to Whitley because none of what Whitley wrote about had anything to do with any of his research. And this was, you know, he had been at this conference giving, you know, a talk and showing films and doing hypnosis with people and so forth. So Whitley Strieber, he changed my opinion of Whitley, that maybe Whitley wasn't giving us factual data, you know, to the extent that somebody like Stephen Greer might be giving.
But maybe Whitley didn't remember because a lot of the I won't call them abductees because they're not. Experiencers is probably a better word for it. A lot of them, you know, do have psychological damage, you know, PTSD. They do have screen memories and all kind. You know, they are quite messed up in quite a lot of cases. In the majority of cases, when they remember anyway, they're a bit messed up.
Yeah, one thing I'll throw out there, you know, we've always got to deal with the fact we're human beings. Okay, so what is the being part? Depending on one's perception on prior biographies and that kind of thing, the physical earth has never given birth or created a spiritual being. There's the possibility that we're all aliens in one sense of the word. As a being, where have we had prior existences? An astral realm, you know, we can go through all the different theories. It's very possible that in earlier episodes of this physical universe or our own broader biography, that we ourselves may have been in or connected to different physical forms. So did the earth produce the human body through mechanistic evolution? Or does the earth just sustain the possibility that bipedal hominids were brought here? I mean, there's a lot of possibilities. So to think of us as just sitting ducks, what if we did come from a different realm or even a different physical planet, lost a body there, came here? So when you start to look at it that way, you see some interesting things. So in my practice, where I've worked with people that, like Daz just said, when they burn through a screen memory, probably the most classic one, and I still laugh even though at the time it was so traumatic for the session partner I was working with. She had just kept saying, oh, it's a rainbow bridge, it's a rainbow bridge, and spirits are just coming in through the colors, and I knew where she was going. And all of a sudden she just started crying, and gut-wrenching crying, like it hurt me to watch that kind of crying. And I said, what's happened? She said, the rainbow bridge just turned into shit highway. And I said, explain. So she had recalls. Now, I'm not talking about people coming off the street looking for this stuff or people who have ever researched this. I'd say a good 60% of the session partners I work with do not whatsoever expect this type of thing to come up. I've had people.
You know, I wonder if I could interject something.
Okay, I'd like to finish. I'd like to finish what I'm saying, and then.
All right. I'm having a memory I totally forgot about. But yeah, sure. Okay.
Okay. So I'm talking about people throwing up in my garbage can, people who have to run to the bathroom and use the bathroom, having full physical, very vivid recalls. Having been through those sessions myself before I became a practitioner, I can assure you it's not imagination, and the magnitude of it when it comes to a re-expression of certain aspects, emotional and physical, you can't generate that kind of thing. So at the very least, given a life of personal experiences and then several thousand hours of these sessions with individuals, there is an aspect of this that's just flat out hostile and nasty. Now, are there beings that have come in here to take human bodies to be helpful spirits? Absolutely. Does other aspects of the universe care enough about what's going on Earth to intervene? I would say absolutely. I just suggest with all sincerity, just don't take it too lightly. It's like if I go walking down one street at night and I see a bunch of people with guns and knives, and on the other side of the street I see some people offering the homeless people food. I'm going on that side of the street. It's the same street, but two completely different things. So, the last actual abduction attempt I had was in 2010. I was able to stop it, but the one before it, I actually have photos of what was done to my back. I can take you to the internet. I can show you those identical photos of multiple people. And one case that was substantiated by a police investigation because children were injured. And they showed a picture of that. The police took a picture of the marks on that guy's back. You put my picture next to it, you can't tell them apart. So there's an objective aspect to this. And why one person might draw negative ones and so forth, so on, theories are endless. All I do, and Ingo in his abduction feature article in Fate magazine, he just says there's nothing wholesome about this activity. And if we as a broader community start to become aware of it and interact with it to, as Ingo put it, penetrate it and expose it, somewhere along that lines is going to be the start of our answer. So I know I sound too serious, but God, there's no way I would make this stuff up for personal entertainment. So anyways, that I guess I just wanted to get off my chest, and I can kind of hear the tension or the assertion in Grian's voice as well. Anybody who's had these experiences is not as rosy and cheerful as others who had a rainbow bridge in their memory.
Russell,
So
I've seen a lot of your I'm really intrigued with a lot of the comments and points that you put across and the remote viewing pages there. And I'd really be interested to have a chat with you at some point if you'd be willing. I'm quite interested to know a bit more and possibly find out a little bit more about things that I've experienced, but it seems so very, very hazy. If you're open to that. You're muted.
You're on mute here.
You're muted at the moment, Russell.
I was wondering if I could just jump in for a second. It's Rose here. Hello?
Yep.
Hi. So get this. I had totally forgotten about this, but I did think of it the other day coming up to this meeting. It came to my mind, and it's so weird because I mean I've never had any experience with ET, like zero, and I never wanted to, and I've not ever looked for ET. But there was this one dream I had when I was just an adolescent. I must have been about 14, maybe 13, somewhere around there. And I woke up from this dream where I had flown to Earth in a spaceship, honest to God, and it was all purple, like ultraviolet. Everything was purple inside the spaceship. And we crash landed in this field. And we were running and running, and we were being chased. And there were these like old haystacks, like the old kind, where they were just stacked, you know, with pitchforks. Like it was an old time. And it was like in France, I think. I had this feeling like it was in France. But I mean, I don't know. I never pursued it. I never thought about it too much. But I did have that dream. So I don't know what that means. I don't know what it means. But I just wanted to throw that out there and see what anybody would say about it.
Oh, okay, I don't know. I'll just let me finish my response. Is your name pronounced Jules?
Jules, yes.
Okay, let me finish my response to Jules, Rose, and then I'll butt out. Yeah, no, I'd be very happy to talk, but I also want to disclaim up front. When there's distance or over a video, I don't want to elicit or bring forth, you know, unpleasant memories in a situation where I'm not in person with a person. So there's reasons I don't work with people online, because sometimes it can kind of get a little intense. I'd love to talk with you about it topically, but as far as, you know, eliciting the memories or going too far into it, there's just a, you know, I guess if you will, a safety or a consideration factor. So
absolutely. Yes, I fully appreciate that, mate, and
right.
I appreciate where you're coming from.
So yes to the chat, and now I will unplug and.
Actually, before you go, Russell, I've got a quick question for you, Russell. I might have missed this in a conversation earlier, but what is it that you do that you're talking about here?
I'm a clearing practitioner, so I work with people. I use galvanic skin response as a tertiary indication of energetic activity in the mental space. The primary indication is what the client says. You just take it at face value. Then I've seen various scenarios unfold and I've learned to recognize some things, and then the meter. So the topic comes from the session partner and the various means that I might use to help them access the memory. Now, everything I do is wide awake, sitting upright in a chair. There's no regression, no suggestion. In fact, the less I can say, in fact, it's identical to being a good monitor in remote viewing. Open-ended questions, no leading, and hopefully just be, you know, a good session. It could last 3 hours, and hopefully I only have to say 10 words. No diagnosis, no evaluation. Just let the person perceive what they're perceiving, dramatize, dissolve, express physical sensations, emotional sensations, and at some point, they'll actually be able to look at it and go, all right, as much as I prefer not, that's what happened. But the trauma and the outside of their awareness pushing in on them does dissolve.
Awesome, thank you for letting me know. I was very curious. And I'm gonna have to go here in a minute, so bye-bye everybody. I'm gonna hang along.
Before you do, I really enjoyed those animation sessions, and I saved a bunch of that stuff where you detected the satellites affecting remote viewers. So I want to thank you too, because you contributed an awful lot to my research.
Awesome.
Okay.
Anything I can do to help. I have so much fun and I learn so much doing this that I'm just here to learn. So anything I make, I'd love to share.
Well, you really contributed to one of my studies, and I just wanted to thank you personally.
Oh, thank you so much. It's nice to hear this.
Okay, anyone got any questions or anything they want to discuss then?
Might I just very quickly say a quick hi to Mike Myers. Hello, mate. Sorry, I met him at the last remote viewing conference, my first trip to the States, and I met Mike, and we had a great old time. Good.
Well, I still was wondering if anyone had anything to say about my dream, if that's okay.
I don't. I'm not very good on dreams and stuff. Because it could be anything. It could be subjective, subconscious. It could be.
I know, it's just weird, and I thought I would just mention it, but I don't think it's anything really either. I don't know why I would have a dream about flying to Earth in a spaceship, that's all, but I did, and who knows, maybe something will come of it some point in the future. I don't know. Thanks, though.
Was it the first dream of its kind that you've had, or was it just a one-off that sort of really made it stand out?
Well, you see, I have dreams, but I have dreams that sort of look into the future sometimes, or I have some emotional dreams, about my life experiences that are memorable, and some of them stay with me and they're meaningful. And this was one of those that stayed with me, but it is very bizarre because I don't have generally dreams about UFOs, and that's what I'm saying. It kind of was a one-off. But then again, I ignored it, right? And I didn't do anything about it, didn't pursue it, didn't ask any questions. So maybe I might have missed something important, and I've had that happen too. So
Yeah.
Maybe. Sorry.
Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah.
Maybe you should throw it in your target pool and hit it as a target.
Yeah, that might be an idea. It was when I was like 14. I was a teenager, but it was a dream about. Seemed like it was in my past. It seemed like. I wonder if it was a side dream, like a remote viewing dream, and I was seeing from somebody else's eyes, possibly. I've had experiences like that, not dreams. So this is really an unusual dream that I had, actually. So you're right. Maybe I should think about it a little more. Thanks.
Hi, I unhid myself, but I was going to ask the question. This is Alexis, not whoever you're asking about, Alexis, at the beginning. One of the questions that has come up a lot in these sessions that I've heard is kind of the future of remote viewing. So my question originally was about, does anyone train children? But then as I was listening to these ET stories, I was thinking maybe it's not safe. But I just hear a lot of people in a lot of different spaces. There's some folks, I guess, in the UK that are teaching kids to see without sight, like they blindfold them and teach them how to perceive, and they're like, doing puzzles and drawing and coloring books and things like that with blindfolds on. And the idea that children have a better sense perception at younger ages until they kind of get all of their adult clutter in their minds. So I guess I was just kind of curious about any thoughts on that.
Yeah, I'd jump in here. I actually taught my son when he was about 8 or 9. His sketches were okay. I was quite impressed with that. And some of the vocab that he was able to express was reasonable. But at such a young age, they need to develop their vocabulary and in their Rolodex. There's no adverse effects in what I saw. In fact, he's carried on and they've given him more training and he's done quite well. So as far as children go, I don't see any problem.
I was raised with psychic phenomena, astrology. I was taught how to do telekinesis as a child, among other things, and it's all taught me well. And my mother had me doing all of this when I was anywhere between 5 and 10, 11 years old. Everything changed for us. But I've kept up on it off and on throughout the years. And now I'm almost 60 trying to get back to a lot of this stuff. And I started with remote viewing several years ago. I was on Daz's group on, it was a weird page. I don't remember the name of it. But I really enjoyed what I've been doing, and I appreciate what my mother taught me, because without it, I wouldn't know anything about any of this stuff at all. But she used to have psychic thoughts and psychic, what is it called? Precognitive. She would see things before they happen. She would dream them. She'd see them happen in her waking state as well. And so she was a great psychic, and she passed it on to her children, thankfully, because otherwise I'd probably be a non-believer in all of this. Thank you.
How old are the current viewers that Courtney's using? Aren't they rather young? Weren't they trained at a pretty early starting age?
Say that again.
Can you hear me? I was asking. Daz probably knows. How young, like Princess and those that Courtney's using right now? When were those guys trained? Were trained pretty young, right?
I think they're legal to wear those outfits. They got to be legal on the internet, right?
Let's not talk about the age then, maybe.
There's a whole bunch, many levels of uncomfortability there. There really is.
Yeah, I
was just talking about people young.
I saw some videos of young girls. I couldn't believe it through the what is that one YouTube site? Oh gosh.
Farsight, is it?
Yeah.
Farsight, and they had these two young girls. They were remote viewing Stonehenge. They were amazing. They were using the ideogram, and they must have been, well, they were young teenagers. So I think it doesn't matter how old you are. You know, I think some people maybe have an affinity, like a talent. These two girls were incredible. They did Stonehenge. You should check it out. An excellent video.
Yeah, I'm curious about this idea that it might be easier for younger people, but then I'm also curious about this idea that there may be some inherent danger in doing this kind of work, and kind of what's the balance between those two.
Probably depends what targets you go for, I guess, or I mean, what you do with the remote viewing. I mean, I'm an operational remote viewer, so you know I work with quite a lot of different people. Only ones that I trust though. But you know, you never know, you know, because you're blind to all the projects. You never know where they're going to send you. So there's always a possibility that you may be sent to something that you as a person don't like.
Certainly, some of Courtney's topics have been dubious. I think one of the ones he put the goals on was Jack the Ripper, which is. That's not going to pick up anything, and they actually, you guys have obviously seen it, or a lot of you probably have, and it was the level of trauma that's like. You're throwing someone blind into a situation where they're like to see such horrendous things. It was
that kind of targeting, I think, would be wrong to do without prior warning. I mean, at least because I've done hundreds of missing person cases, and you know, quite a lot of those were traumatic because you know there was a lot of rape and murder, and you know it was things like, you know, babies being killed and that kind of stuff. But at least going into that, I wasn't blind. Oh, I was blind to the targets, but I wasn't blind to the type of target. I knew I was working with the police on missing people, so you know I knew up front the kind of things that I should be expecting to see. You don't really want to see that kind of serial killer stuff if you're not prepared for it up front. I think you need some kind of, you know, even if, because you can be front loaded, you could work that operationally still, and just have the warning that this may, you know, just, you know, maybe aware the viewer that you may find some kind of emotional trauma at this target, and that still doesn't sell the remote viewer anything specific about that target.
think
Did you
this,
find yourself emotionally impacted by those sessions, those hundreds of sessions you did? Sometimes you walk away from a session just feeling.
Probably over time, a little bit. But I'm quite lucky in the fact that I know that, I'm not there, I'm not experiencing it. It's not real. It's just me picking up, data that's floating around or floating within us. So I'm pretty much, emotionally detached. But over the years, working with groups of people, I have to be careful how I phrase this.
Sorry, you can be blunt.
I have to be honest, and I don't want to be. How do I phrase this?
Easy, spit it out.
Just spit it out.
Just turn off record again.
Yeah.
Pause it, pause
I'm trying to be politically correct.
Oh God.
Please don't.
I find that, maybe it's just me saying this, and I don't mean this in a bad way at all, but I do find that the female remote viewers do have a lot more emotional problems with serial killer and death type targets of that kind of thing.
I believe you.
And
I stepped out for a second to find something for Alexis. Did anybody tell her about Ingo's new book? Alexis, are you still there?
I am.
Ingo just released a new book called Preserving the Psychic Child. I went to find it for you. And forgot that we had loaned it to my girlfriend's daughter. But it's on Amazon. And he had a real rough go of being psychic when he was a child. In fact, like his first psychic event, he got beaten for having it. So he's written from his own perspective, I imagine. I haven't read the book. I loaned it out right away. But Preserving the Psychic Child, that might be a start for something useful for you.
Thanks, I appreciate it. I'm an educator, so that's just my bias to always be thinking about kids.
I think when people work in groups, and as I train people, I ask them if there are targets that they will not consider. And I think for future reference, with anybody's working in groups, you get an idea of people's limitations, what they will work, what they won't work. And then those sort of targets, you wouldn't give somebody who's more emotionally attached or developed. As Daz says, the females seem to pick up more in that area. Pass on that sort of subject matter. Easy. Only give it to the remote viewers.
Most of the serial killers and rapists out there are men also, so I guess it makes sense to me that men are more comfortable with that subject matter.
Yeah.
Well, I went to the checkout counter of a grocery store, and I accidentally touched a gal that was ahead of me. And what I got was watching her boyfriend beat the heck out of her. And a friend of mine told me that that was a different kind of ability, and I'm still trying to figure out. Nobody's been able to tell me what it is. I mean, I know I have psychic and empathic abilities, but I didn't know that I could do that. And maybe it's a combination of everything.
Oh, can I just say something? Because I knew a woman, she used to work in my uncle's restaurant, named Juliet. And she had her talent, this was the thing, she would touch a piece of jewelry, or someone would bring an object, and she would be able to get information from that. She had that same, and she called it clairvoyance. She said it was a type of clairvoyance.
Psychometry. Okay. I don't know how to pronounce it. Psychometry.
Yeah.
No, I don't understand psychometry.
That's what that is. That's
the idea. That's the term that you touch something, you get information about it. Usually it's in terms of inanimate objects, like picking up a historical relic and suddenly having an experience of being back in the past in Egyptian times or something, or knowing the history of the object. But if you put it towards a person, I don't think the title of it changes. And it would be a type of clairvoyance, but clairvoyance would be a really general term, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, I've been able to pick up stuff off of personal objects, and now touching people, apparently. It got really kind of crazy there for a while because every time I'd walk into a public space, I really had to pull back my ability because I got lambasted with everything. That's an experience.
That reminds me of something Lynn Buchanan talks about. That he said that when viewers were viewing for a while, sometimes their senses were heightened, and they might develop like a synesthesia. And I was wondering if that is just something that Buchanan has experienced, or if any of you noticed your perception of the world around you changing or swapping or mixing up after having a lot of practice hours. And I'm still a baby viewer.
You know what? I'm a baby viewer too, and I have to say, since I started doing ideogram viewing, I've noticed a couple of visual effects that visual trails, almost like I took magic mushrooms. You know, I get these visual trails just out of nowhere. So I don't know, that's something I'm experiencing anyway, and I just started, you know, with this. So maybe that's nothing to do with it. You know, who knows?
I haven't noticed anything, to be honest, but for me, when I'm doing RV, and you know, if I'm sat there with the paper and I'm saying, I don't know, it feels cold or it feels hot, I don't actually feel hot or cold. I just know internally within me that it's hot or cold, or you know, I don't see color red, or if I say, you know, it feels like it's metal, I'm not feeling metal in any way. I just know, again, it's just a feeling deep inside me that it's metal, that if I was there, I would be touching metal. So it can't be, yeah, it's, for me, none of it's real. It doesn't, you know, it doesn't exist. It's just me accessing data, really. But that's just, you know, that might just be me.
I've been blessed in the years, probably similar to you, Daz. I've started getting an interest in this stuff around 1996, but in that time I've had two occasions which I would describe as a bilocation incident. One of them, I really cannot fathom what happened. What I was trying to do, I'm not sure if I can show this. I was actually trying to, I can't remember where I was. I think I used to live in Australia for a period of time, and I was trying to predict crop circles that would happen in the UK from Australia in advance. This is when the internet was in its infancy, and on one of these particular occasions, I suddenly found myself floating around that. If you can see that image there behind me, I'm not sure whether I'm doing that justice. And did that come through at all? Or?
Yeah.
It did. Okay, it was this it was just this symbol. I was in this white place, and I was floating around it, and it was emanating. It was like power, massive power. I have that picture as my Facebook avatar at the moment. I'm hoping at some point someone will recognize that and say, I've seen that shit before, and that's why I'd much rather have that symbol up there.
Is it possible to flash it again, because I missed it? I'm sorry.
Okay. Jules, have you got the share screen button on the bottom of your screen? You could share it.
See if we can do that.
Gosh, where did I put I did put my stupid glasses on. There they are. My yoga.
Jazz, I'm working with about I work from home and I've got about 3 screens, and I've got that much going on here. It's probably safer for me just to put it as the background.
Is it the robot? Is that the robot? Is that it?
Well, it's not a robot as such, but
it looks like a robot. It looks like the one that was in the space station.
What that thing was, I have no idea. It was emanating
Have you tried?
Massive power.
Have you tried Googling? Have you tried Googling the image?
I have, yeah. I've not come up with anything. I'm hoping someone else will recognize it. Backing up, there were 2 experiences where I had this bilocation sensation. The second one, and it was stupid, it was silly, but it was bloody accurate. I have a bunch of friends who we were dabbling and playing with remote viewing in various methods, and I thought just one day I thought, okay, I'm going to meet these guys at the pub. I'm actually going to try and see what's happening at my local village pub in Western Cornwall, and although I was very much aware of being on the bed where I was lying while I was doing this session, I was using a ERV, extended remote viewing. I suddenly became aware that I was actually standing in the car park of my local pub, and I could actually feel wind, and senses were there. It was quite unusual, and I thought, okay, let's go into the pub, and I made a gesture to head towards the door, and I thought, hang on, I don't have to go through the door. I can go through the wall, and this is an old part of Cornwall. You know, the buildings are hundreds of years old, and so I passed through a granite wall, which must be, I know, best part of 2 foot thick granite block. And the sensation I felt as I was passing through that, the only way I can describe that was like, it's just my impression, but the only way I can describe it, it felt like water passing through chalk. It was very difficult. And I got to the other side of the wall, actually into the pub, and I felt nauseous as a result. I thought I was going to throw up, and I thought, oh, I'm trying to steady myself, and I'm lying on the bed. And then I saw several people in the pub, and then I was back out, and I was back on the bed, and it was so incredibly real. It was stunning. So I sketched this stuff down and drew it down. And I jumped in the car, headed down to the pub, and I walked into the pub, and the scene that I just drew was right there in front of me. I was able to walk into the pub and I had a really shit old flip mobile phone, and take a snapshot of the scene that I'd seen probably 15, 20 odd minutes prior to. And the accuracy was absolutely incredible. I've only ever had this once. And so in relation to that question there, only twice has that happened. And I was actually at the place. I was there. I don't know what else to say. Yeah, I'm getting quite worked up.
Jules, going back to this object here, have you considered putting it in your target pool or putting it out to a group of remote viewers and asking the question about this?
I did put it out, Rick, at one point when I first joined one of the remote viewing Facebook pages, and someone said, okay, I'm going to put this out to someone. And I didn't ever hear anything back from it, from this person. But this, I was floating. I put a video up on, in later years, I do 3D graphics, which are used for simulators, racing simulators predominantly. But I've been able to create 3D models. And so I was able to create a 3D model of this and then recreate my remote viewing session, if you will, in a 3D environment. I still don't know what this thing was, but this thing was so powerful. It was not malevolent or even benevolent in any way. It was just radiating just this massive intelligence. It was incredible, really, really quite stunning.
Well, you've got the sketch there. Why don't you just put it in your target pool or see if a group will do a target for you?
I would, yeah, I can, yeah, do it, send a JPEG or something to Rick. I would love for it to pop up.
Well, don't send out any photographs. Just
no, of that image, just of that image.
Don't attach anything to send out to anybody. Just put a question, put it on a TRN with that image, and then just send it out to a group or put it in your target pool.
Yeah, no, I'd be interested. It's affected me quite powerfully, and one of those mysteries. I don't know.
Let's have a look at the list. Any questions? I don't think they're on the list. Is there anything else? Anyone wants to discuss anything, or got any questions, or something to share?
I'm just curious what people think of the John Vivanco video that went up during the week, the virus video. Not so much the data, but the format I used to get the data. It's image streaming, some type of variation of image streaming. Has anybody come across that or used that, or do you believe that that could work? It's out of protocol, or?
I haven't seen the video. Could you describe the method that was used a little more, Patrick?
Yeah, he said they didn't use the remote viewing protocol that he normally uses. But they also use some kind of, it's based on Wim Ringer's image streaming. And that's what they use to get the data. So I don't know exactly how he done it, and even if it's possible to get that kind of data using it's like I'm a little familiar with Wim Ringer's image streaming, but that I've never seen or heard it used that way. You know.
One of the first examples Wim Ringer has in his book is of some guy who learned image streaming and then had an intuitive notion about like a tire was going to burst on the highway or something like that. So I don't think that Wim Winger's whole spiel was about intuition or psychic powers, but except for how it might relate to making good decisions in your business and being successful. And I didn't get too far into it, but it did seem like image streaming would be useful for sort of developing, getting comfortable with your mind's imagery and personal symbology. Especially towards a hypnagogic state. And I think that transdimensional systems like the Orobomb manuals talk about image streaming as a precursor to as a good practice before remote viewing, but I think it seems mostly meaningless to me. And I've had success and enjoyable sessions. It's helped me get more comfortable in my own head to sit and image stream for a while, but actually doing a remote viewing session, much more like what Daz describes, of having an intuition of what might be there, but more as like a word, but not actually experiencing it. And definitely not seeing it the way that image streaming seems to. But I can imagine people trying to use it for that purpose. I'm just afraid it'd be full of AOL.
Yeah, that would be my feeling on it as well.
I mean, you can get into a hypnagogic, I don't even know how to pronounce hypnagogic, tomato, but you can get into a state like that, and you can have volitional hallucinations, and maybe they are of something, maybe they are not. On the remote viewing Reddit, one of the number one questions we get is like, hey guys, oh man, I had this dream last night and it was like I was seeing my friend and then there was a stained glass window. Did I just remote view? My dad said he thinks I remote viewed. And then our answer to that is pretty much, if you didn't do it on purpose and you didn't have a target in mind, then it doesn't meet the definition of what we're calling remote viewing. So it's very hard to say. If you're interested in finding about what we call remote viewing, then stick around and see if maybe you can put that to a practical application. But that question comes up. It's probably like 40% of the traffic on our subreddit. And we appreciate eyeballs, but is remote viewing? I do have a question for you. I'd love to see a link to that if you have the Vivanco video you're talking about with image streaming type thing.
Yeah.
It's on the face. I don't know if you're in the Facebook group, Remote Viewers and Remote Viewing. It's definitely in there on a thread.
I'll have to find it. Thank you. I was just wondering, if we talk about ETs a lot, and most of the time I'm not able to participate. But is remote viewing not interesting enough, kind of on its own? It's sort of my question. We drift so much into ETs, and that's not my entry point. There was a great question at the beginning of the call of what's your entry point to remote viewing? Was it aliens? And in my case, it wasn't. It was a much more earthbound book. It was Paul H. Smith's book. And you can't get much more banal than Paul H. Smith's book. It was wonderful. It's about office politics, and that made me believe remote viewing was real. Because it was like office politics, political politics that seemed to kill the program from Paul H. Smith's book, and not like a vast conspiracy scheme. And having dealt with the government, I believe that a bit. But remote viewing seems like a really interesting phenomenon. Are there too many people who kind of bring their baggage to remote viewing and hope remote viewing is going to solve some other problem for them instead of just exploring the phenomenon of remote viewing?
probably a bit of both. I mean, there are people like Courtney Brown and Farsight that do want to use remote viewing to solve or find out more about the UFO alien question. But there's the other side of it in that, just out of pure happenstance, most of the remote viewers that were in the Stargate unit had either UFO encounters on their own, but they also had UFO encounters within RV sessions. And not only that, a lot of the people that funded, ran, and were involved in the project, not only from SRI, but from the military, from the CIA, the DIA, and many more, ever since Stargate in the 70s, they've also been involved in the background in lots of other UFO things, like, Hal Puthoff, he worked for the NSA, then he worked for SRI, doing the remote viewing program. Later on, he was part of this secret working group for the American government on UFOs. He's allegedly part of this, if anyone don't know this secret Avery group of top government whistleblowers. And now he's part of that, Shoot for the Stars initiative. So when you have people like that are heavily involved in remote viewing and, essentially one of the key people that invented remote viewing, as we know it as a modern thing, who has spent his entire life in UFO research, it's hard to separate the two, really, I think.
Well, and Ingo too.
Yeah.
I mean, when he launched Penetration and, but Grian, my entry was not, even though I spoke a bit about ET, my entry was also Paul Smith. And as an ongoing student of his now, his objective skepticism has been so useful to me. But on the flip side, and I think Daz checked it out, Paul just made some very candid revelations about his own ET remote viewing on a coast-to-coast show, and said some things for the first time that I've never heard him say that were very interesting. And then he also does have a Jeffrey Mishlev talk on UFOs and remote viewing to, kind of get that other side. But his groundedness literally is what pulled me into it, very similar to the way you said. I was going to throw one thing at you, Daz. Would you be interested in a quick screenshot of possible feedback for that session? And what triggered this was when you said you had some sense of a van doing a broadcast.
Yeah, go ahead.
This was a weird deal. Muck Rock, I think it's called, it sent out an FOIA request on something, and ended up getting a couple things in the package they didn't expect, and this was one of them. So this came from an official government source talking about basically a lot of what we talked about yesterday in the underground base topic, but right there is a little van broadcasting voice to skull type technology.
That would make sense. I definitely felt that what I was picking up on was mobile, and it wasn't. I wasn't picking up on some kind of advanced alien technology. It was right. It was Earth based, because I could see the computers and the servers. And
well, as soon as you said van, I thought of this this graphic that I had looked at some months ago. So maybe that's useful to you.
Yeah, very interesting. Yeah.
Yeah, how to stop.
We are living in very interesting times at the moment with everything that's going on globally. So we'll see how that pans out.
I'm curious how people who are doing these interesting projects, how you deal with the cognitive dissonance of like living in the world where you are aware of so many things that people just don't know. I mean, I tried some remote viewing like in 2017, and then recently was invited to join the group, and so that's re-sparked my interest, but I'm not actively doing it. But just as someone who's a reader and curious, like it drives me crazy how little people are aware of what's going on in the world. So I'm curious, with a much deeper understanding of that, like how do people deal with that?
Anyone else want to take this? Or, I mean, for me personally, I'm quite lucky because I run the remote viewing group. You know, so that's a few thousand people to talk to. And plus I talk to loads of people, you know, like Rick and Russell and loads of other people outside in different circles and groups. So I've got the crypto viewing group of people as well, and we're doing some quite strange, on the edge stuff. So I personally have quite a lot of people that I can talk to about this kind of stuff. So I feel quite lucky in that. But you know, if I go out to like a family barbecue or something, or you know, to the neighbors and stuff like that, they're all talking about the latest football game and stupid stuff like that, and I'm sat there thinking, oh,
knobs.
you know, you know, and I've done it. I'd look at my wife and I'm like, what the fuck have I got to speak about with these people?
Yeah. Jazz, you and I need to go to the same barbecues, man. It'll make life a hell of a lot more interesting, dude.
Yeah. So you know, I'm just there thinking, oh, you know, I've got nothing to say to these people. I don't care who's shagging who on whatever documentary TV program on TV, you know, Love Island or whatever. It's like, you know, there's bigger things in the world going on here. You know, there's bigger meanings with, you know, just with what's happening with the virus and the, you know, the cover-ups and what Trump's doing and everything else. Everything in the world's just like way more interesting. But yeah, it must be hard.
I wonder if you think, I don't know, I'm autistic. I've just been discovering this myself because women are not diagnosed autistic. So, I mean, in just general terms, I have a different way of understanding the world. And I wonder how many of us in the RV group are autistic. I'd say I bet it's a higher percentage. Because you just don't look at the world the same. You don't have the same need for certain information that neurotypicals have, like the gossip stuff and stuff.
I think most of us are creative, and I find that most of the good remote viewers I know have some kind of creative pursuit of one kind or another. I myself, I've trained myself for the last 5 years in photography, and I do that as a sideline for myself. I know Paul Smith and a lot of the others were into art, and you know, we know Ingo was an artist and a writer as well. Lynn Buchanan is an artist as well. I think being creative helps in the RV process, because I think and this is just my personal. Well, I did speak about this with Ingo actually. We did have a conversation about this, but you know, it's my belief that the wherever I get my artistic kind of creativity or spark from is the exact same feeling, place, and intuition that comes from remote viewing. It all comes from the same kind of.
True. I totally agree with you on that. Exactly. And that's where I came to RV from, not from aliens, but through the creative process. Synchronicity really brought me to hardcore remote viewing.
The whole process that most of us are using, because we all pretty much are using one kind of derivative or another of Ingo CRV, you know, so it may be, you know, TRV or another part of CRV that essentially came from Ingo CRV, and that's the modern methods most of us are using. And essentially, at its core basicness, all CRV is just being creative, because you start off with doodles, and then you progress to sketches, and then later on you make models. So,
I know, and to me, I thought this is too easy. Why didn't I learn this ages ago? I thought it comes so naturally. As soon as I learned it, I knew it was right. Felt so intuitively right to me, because it was what it was a way of focusing the energy to a certain objective, and that is incredibly helpful when you're, you know, looking for something. I didn't know how to do that before, and it just gave me that sort of missing link. Really like RV.
Darby says, Russell, for those of us who didn't see the Coast to Coast show, could you go into what Paul revealed a bit? Russell, did you hear that? You're just unmuted him. I don't think I can unmute you.
Okay, no, there we go. Yeah, I'm not very tech savvy these days. Yeah, what I was just doing actually was looking for the synopsis from the show. Essentially, he goes a little more into detail, in particular about a moon session. You know, I mean, it's, what is there something specific you wanted to know? I hate to give away, you know, a show if you're gonna watch it. Are you gonna watch it, or are you just wanting?
I've got it on my list to watch, but you know, you can say whatever you want. That's all he said. It was just in the chat that he wrote that.
Oh, is Darby still on? Okay, yeah, there he is. Okay, give me 1 second, Darby. Let me find the C2C synopsis, and then I'll give it to you.
I just thought maybe something was on the tip of your mind that he revealed that you hadn't heard that you thought we might be interested in if we hadn't.
Oh, okay, yeah, I think so, because there's a little bit of an interesting history to it. It goes back, someone had mentioned earlier, the notion of remote viewers being detected at the other, at the location that they're viewing. Paul really hadn't taken a position on that and was slightly against the notion. And when he got back out his moon sessions, he looked at his own form or a session document and realized that he perceived that he had been spotted in a similar way to the way Ingo was in penetration, and that he had made note that the being was not particularly happy about his being there. There was also something that, if Daz doesn't mind me saying, that correlated to one of your sessions. Is it okay to say it?
Yeah, go ahead, yeah.
Yeah, so Daz, when I sent him that synopsis, because he's working on an article about moon sessions, Daz noted that Paul had mentioned something about AI being involved with that particular thing. Daz says that was the first time he had seen direct correspondence to the session that he had. Then the other thing, even through all the time I've known Paul in all the classes, he's never really come out and said, okay, I'm a believer. And on this show he did. He just came straight out. I think that has something to do, he's very, very close to Hal Puthoff, to this day, very close. And Paul suggested that Hal's let him, become aware of a couple of things. So whatever converted him, Paul kind of said, yeah, I think this is going on. And then the revelation that he had documented himself being spotted. So that pretty much, but it's worthwhile interview to hear for sure.
Thanks.
And back to that, you got that quote I sent you from Ingo's penetration, Daz, where he said telepathy plus something else. Yeah, that for those, because someone will undoubtedly ask. Let's see if I can find it. Okay, so when Ingo was talking about what happened to him on the moon, he got the sense, well, it's more like they were feeling rather than seeing or picking up on mind vibes. It's more like it was just sort of a dimensional thing, rather sort of like they felt a ripple in some kind of cross dimensionality. And then Ingo's like, yeah, that's it. They felt something, not particularly me, but something. And then he talked about the sense they were going to hone in on him. So, only those guys, they were going to hone in on it. And that's the best way I can describe it. And then Axelrod, the mysterious Axelrod, said, so you are referring to telepathy plus something else. So do these things, and it's also described a little bit in the underground base sessions where Pat Price talked about this protective field or whatever. So is it that they have some sort of a field broadcast AI, and when it gets disturbed, it's kind of like, okay, what's going on over there? And then from there, they could tune in and say, oh, that's Ingo Swann, and later we'll track him down in the grocery store. Does that answer the question? Darby?
I appreciate you sharing those couple of excerpts from the interview. I didn't have the latter part of what you said, I didn't have a question about.
Okay, yeah. No, I mean, did I answer your question? So if that works out.
I was just curious if there was a couple of things you wanted to share, and you did. Thanks.
I'm still not convinced with the tracking thing though, but that's just because, being a remote viewer, I need feedbackable evidence.
Yeah, no, and there isn't any. It's all pretty much anecdotal. The source that told me is anybody else watching the new Skinwalker Ranch series?
Yeah, just
that really
is this week, I think. I saw my first episode last night.
Right. It's producing, to me, some fairly convincing and interesting data. One of the stories that came out of the NIDS period of time, and someone had mentioned Eric Davis earlier. Eric Davis worked out there on the Skinwalker project. I confirmed this with him private message a couple of days ago, for 6 years. And some of the things that happened there to the Robert Bigelow team, which Hal was a part of, Eric Davis and others, it was indicated that from that situation, poltergeist, quote unquote, poltergeist-like activity had followed them home. So it wasn't from a remote viewing session.
Actually, Russell, because you're to me sound like you're in quite a good position to know, you in more frequent contact, say with Erica and Hal. Both of them have visited and spent time at Skinwalker. Would that be correct? Or?
First of all, I've only had two very brief discussions, or Facebook discussions with Eric. So I don't know Eric. We're not. Hal, I would say, is from his point of view, to me, he's a polite acquaintance. I had an opportunity to sit with him at a lunch at IRVA, where I was very lucky. The last open seat was across the table from him. He invited myself and another student of Paul's into conversation, which was very interesting. And then in our basic class, we had a live Skype with him where he let us ask him questions, but that was strictly about the inception of remote viewing. And then in our intermediate class, we got a little bit deeper. So I'm not friends or don't have anything like substantial contact with either of them. And then with Hal, one time wanted some information I had, and I had a couple of emails. So I don't have any particular inside scoop or anything of substance in those areas.
I've had a couple of like not Russell really, just a couple of conversations with him. I've interviewed him, but I did recently with some other reviewers do some RV work for them.
Jules, check your chat.
Yeah, one of the things. Oh, I'm sorry, Rick. Go ahead.
I just wanted to say to Jules, have a look at the chat. Read the chat.
I've got to find where my chat button's gone.
Okay, so there's a question here. Oh, go ahead. Is someone going to say something?
Oh, no, just to tie it back to something from earlier, just the Skinwalker Ranch stuff, with all the weird phenomena going on there, and none of it really clearly, say, UFO and abduction based, that really ties much more closely to the type of weird stuff that Whitley Strieber describes in the book I mentioned earlier, Supernatural. And although that book I don't think has gotten the same kind of attention, and I'm not really into the UFO stuff myself. If you're looking for weird phenomena descriptions, including localized to a certain place, that's how he describes, his home and the area that he lived in. Very Skinwalker Ranch-esque so far as I can tell.
Russell, I do have some. If you're interested in Skinwalker Ranch, I do have some information. I do have some of the Bob Bigelow stuff.
Yeah, I'm very interested. Yeah.
Yeah, I have some of the RV stuff that was done for Bob Bigelow on by people and stuff.
I would love to see that for sure. Grin, this week's episode of that show had some pretty convincing footage of two events that you wouldn't necessarily refer to as a physical craft, but they got that on multiple cameras with 5 simultaneous witnesses that, you know, I mean, obviously it's not proof, but I was like, dang, that phenomena they captured was pretty interesting, and it would be, you know, UFO-like. So if you do get a chance to catch that show, the latest episode that aired this Tuesday, I think it was, might cue your interest a little bit.
Thanks.
Wasn't Skinwalker Ranch also one of the first places to have the cattle mutilations?
Not one of the first, because the cattle mutilations go back, you know, they go way, way back. Yeah.
Well, I'm talking about, you know, in the 70s through the 90s.
Maybe in that area, but I think one of the most famous ones wasn't it Snippy the horse from like 1967 or something, I think. That was the one that kicked it off, really.
I don't remember.
Yeah, I like the program. The formats that I find is a little bit strange. It's a little bit like the Chris of Oak Island. But the thing I don't like is the guy with the gun. I can't remember his name. What's his name? They call him Dragon. That's it, Dragon. It's just too over dramatic. Every time everywhere he walks, he's got the guns with him. It's just a little bit, yeah, a bit over the top for me.
Apparently, under the NIDS years, when they built those observation stands, installed the security cameras, the gate, and so forth, I think Dragon and a couple of people have been carried over from the Bigelow days to today, because he mentioned in that show that he'd been there for years.
Yeah.
The new guy just got it in 2016. So one thing I will put out there that I'm allowed to say, even though in this conversation during our intermediate course with Hal, we weren't allowed to record or anything, I asked a question of Hal, essentially, given that you're on the cutting edge of what we're referring to as disclosure, have you or your group had anything like pushback or kickback from proverbially them? And the indication seemed to be a fairly strong yes.
Well, he's definitely very involved and has been for many years. But you know, if you do some research on him, like from the book, there's a great book, the Hunt for Zero Point, and also there's a book called The Field. In The Field, there's some great stuff about Harry Puthoff. And you know, there's some quotes in there from Carl Sagan and a few others that they're saying that some of the papers that Harry Puthoff and the others have put forward about the formation of the universe and 0 point energy, that one day those papers will be absolutely revolutionary to the existence of mankind. So you know, Hal is right in there at the cutting edge of research, really, of what he's doing. And you know, it's got its connections right back to UFOs and remote viewing, all back for the decades.
I had the pleasure of meeting Hal being ever so briefly at the last URVA conference in Vegas at the South Point Casino. And I listened intently to the big speech that he gave. There was a lot of interest in that, obviously. And it was,
yeah, I was at that too, Jules. I'm surprised I didn't meet you then.
I met lots of people, and your face seemed familiar over the past couple of years, Russell. Your face has seemed familiar when you popped up and post. But I remember on the last day, I think Hal was there, and I was so embarrassed because it was my first time to the States, and he was chatting to some fellow, and they're walking to some they're going to have a lunch at the Coronado bar, I think was the thing, and I chased after like a fangirl. I said, "Excuse me, Mr. Puthoff, excuse me," and I took a photo, and I looked like such a knob. I'm not used to taking.
We've all done that.
I'm not used to taking selfies, but I was so bad at it. I looked like I photobombed my own shot with Hal. It's like Hal Puthoff and some long-haired knob from England.
Well, it's funny because I met him also at IRVA for the first time. And what happened there was Paul was having a lunch of like his ex-students, and Hal came, a couple other people, and his current students and everything. So it was a table of maybe 30 people or more easy, long table. Well, I came in like musical chairs, the seat opened up, said, well, that's the last seat, grab it. So I sat down, and Hal was literally directly across the table. So I was nervous, and then when he initiated conversation, it felt like my head filled up with pressure, and I could feel my face turning red. It was just weird. I'm just like, oh my God.
It's like meeting your most favorite. Years ago, my heroes, and Mike Myers will appreciate this. My heroes were rock gods. They were guitarists, they were singers, they were these guys from Iron Maiden and Kiss and all these bands, Bon Jovi. And now my greatest heroes are bloody physicists and scientists. And how that has changed. And I was just gobsmacked, awed just to be the president. This guy has been in all of the books that I've been reading for the past 30 odd years or so. This is the guy. He's part of it. It's incredible.
If you're a fan of Hal, I'll tell you about a moment that just occurred on a recent interview he did. I can try to find the link to it. It's the first and only time where I have seen that guy lose his poker face. And the interviewer had asked him a question, and he was trying to play it real cool, and then he just burst out laughing and just couldn't hold the cover. And it was basically a question like, it was UFO related, and he was trying to be stoic. And then you could see his face start to crack a little. I watched that, I replayed that like 5 times and just laughed every time, because whenever I've talked to him, all that intelligence training, whatever, of course you're going, what does he know? I don't know. But his face never shows a damn thing, no matter what you ask him. But this one video, in fact, I'll try to find it, because just seeing him lose his poker face was,
That'd be cool.
Right.
I really
it was priceless.
I'd really like to see it. And the other nice thing for me was I became, through weird set of circumstances, Paul O'Connor, Irish CRV trainer, and it was the day, I think it was the day that Hal gave his speech at IRVA, and I was at the back chatting to Paul, or it might have been the day after, I can't remember. But I was actually watching Hal, and he was down there with his wife next to him, and just this genuine levels of affection, just very nice. He just seemed to be very tactile. He wasn't aware that I was looking, but his levels of tactility, how they were responding to each other, it was just very, very nice. To me, it made him a hell of a lot more human. Not that he's inhuman, but I'm not sure if that comment makes sense. But it was a moment he wasn't aware that he was being observed, and I was just looking at this guy because I've read a lot about it. I'm just watching, and I thought, I kind of like this fellow. I kind of like this fellow. But yeah, I just thought I'd throw that in there.
So this is for Jules. So at the Bigelow Aerospace pairing, where everybody paired off and went to Bigelow Aerospace, I got to be in a whole 5 group with Hal. So, and I had read all his papers. And he was happy to answer questions, but he was extremely tactful in how he would answer the questions. But the wealth of knowledge that he has regarding that is pretty amazing. It would be great if we could ever know all those things that he's been part of. But another little funny thing is, remember his wife? His wife is somewhat of a famous author. The bookseller at IRVA didn't know it was Hal's wife. And he was trying to sell her a book, and he goes, I can get Hal to autograph it for you. And it just kind of cracked up right in his face. So, anyway, there's some humor.
Brilliant, man. Lovely story.
Let's have a look at some of these. Are there any questions? There's a question here from JJ. Is JJ still here? Daz, I've heard you speak before about remote viewing was not for the faint of heart, and we are talking about experiencers getting PTSD. Do you think they ought to avoid practice of RV? Good question. I don't think remote viewing is for everyone. I only train a couple of people, and Darby's here. He's one of my proteges, students, passed recently, now employed as a remote viewer. And I think he'll tell you that I kind of vet everyone first, and I ask them questions about their mental health and all kinds of things. And if I don't feel that they could do
about, like, for instance, I'm kind of jumpy, and I'm thinking that, so I'm chewing around the edges of this thing that y'all do, and because I'm kind of a jumpy sort, I don't want to, traumatize myself in some further way. But I know that sometimes it only, the first bunch of lessons are mostly just photographs and proof.
Yeah.
Like, what if somebody just went a little far and didn't need to, like, go and watch them bloody up some corpse somewhere or whatever? How do you feel about, like, maybe just doing a couple of levels and not going all the way to the end?
It can happen. It depends, and it ends up depending. If you want to be a remote viewer, what do you want to use it for? But at some point, if you do want to use it in the real world and operations and stuff, there are people that do want you to, I don't know, look at mysteries, look at missing people and all that kind of stuff. So you probably have to be prepared for those type of scenarios. But it comes down to your training, and you have to understand it. It's not real. You aren't there. You don't go to the target. There's no evidence anywhere in all these
It's very
decades.
soothing saying that you absolutely know that you're not there. You're sitting there with a piece of paper and a pencil.
Yeah.
Okay.
But I do know people, and it's come up on the Facebook group as well. I think there's one woman on there, I can't remember her name now, Anita. She had a right go at myself at one point, because she did one of my training targets off my website, and it turned out to have I can't remember what it was some event where people died, and she felt she got emotionally upset and cried and all kinds of stuff over that. And yeah, she felt that targets like that shouldn't be in a pool. But I'm of the opinion that for a person to be a well-rounded remote viewer, they have to at some point experience most of the things that if they go out into the real world they would be expected to experience. And yeah, but so and I've said many times, I've seen people that can't handle what remote viewing does, not just because they see, you might occasionally get to see bad things, but because of the other things it does to you as well. It does change your whole opinion on your place in the universe and how the universe works. And some people just cannot cope with that expansion. I've seen some people go way off the deep end.
Who asked the question about being on the edge and kind of being hesitant about experiencing bad things?
That's JJ.
That'd be me.
Okay. Daz, do you mind if I just throw out a student's opinion here? Okay, so Daz obviously seen, felt a number of things. One thing to keep in mind, our minds do tend to have a safety fuse. So I've seen people maybe get something that was a little bit rough, and in fact, my housemate's very sensitive in this way. So when she views something that's unpleasant, she'll be describing sunshine and flowers and trees and beautiful stuff. And then when you get the feedback, it wasn't that. So there's kind of a protective buffer. Now in Paul's training, he gives you a gradient of sessions, basic, intermediate to advanced, where the impact, the emotional impact aspect, gets a little stronger towards your advanced training. So I had a weird incident. I was the monitor was Bill Ray. Do you know who Bill Ray is?
I do not.
He was in the first class with Paul, Ed Dames, Ingo, and Charlene. Was it, Daz?
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay.
So Bill Ray is very quiet. He doesn't stay involved. But one of the most literally damn remarkable human beings I've ever met in my life. But he's a very, very man's man. He actually served in the military from 1959 to 2013. Special operations. They even did, CNN did a special feature on, I think it was 51 years of service or whatever it was. He's at 70 something years old and is still just like buff, and you look at him and you go, okay, I'm not messing with this guy. So all I'm trying to do is paint a picture of how, you know, tough he is, right? So I was doing a target and I had tears that started to flow. So I was like, wow, this is kind of ridiculous, embarrassing, and numerous other things. So in a very calm, very understanding voice, he said, Russell, set your pen down, you know, scoot your chair back. And I said, I just, like, what is this? So he told me, he said, this would happen in the unit when sometimes we would view a terrorist thing or a hostage thing or what have you. This response, and he made me feel so comfortable having that reaction. Once it dissolved, all of a sudden there was a whole bunch of data behind it. It was like that was like a dam, and once the data came slamming down, I finished the session. When I saw the target, I understood the nature, but you know, I mean, it's something if you don't want to get into targets like that, don't. But it's not like, I don't think it's life destroying, is all I'm trying to say. And when I found out it wasn't something to feel weird or embarrassed about, you know, there's just one of those tender moments in life I'll never forget where Bill just said, hey, it's okay, man. I cried back in the day. It really helped a lot.
Thank you.
And then to Jules, I put in the chat there, I put a link. I found the link to that interview where Hal, a recent interview, where Hal loses his poker face. You'll enjoy it.
Cheers, man. Thank you very much. That I have to go through that chat. There are a couple of things that have popped up that I haven't clicked on, and Rick sent me a message, and so I need to have a look at those. Thank you very much, Russell. Much appreciated.
Is there anything else anyone wants to talk about, or should we finish that for because it's been 2.25 hours?
I do have one final question. Sorry, Daz. Sorry.
That's right. I'm all right. I'm a night owl.
Yeah, I was saying it's late for us, but all these guys in the States and Australia, it's early doors for them, isn't it? So, I'm guessing that you and I came into interest of remote viewing roughly around the same time, sort of late 90s.
I first heard about it in 92, and then
okay, so
trained in it in 94, and then trained properly in it in 96.
So how is it that a guy from Bristol, Bath, is in contact with Ingo Swann? How the hell did you manage that? That's a hell of a swing, dude.
Well, it's because I was on the Irva. Irva back then had most of their communications were on, and most people's communication back then were on a email communication list. So you're on there and everyone sends in messages and you all chat and stuff, and it's all by email. And I'm one of these people that likes to research, and I read everything, all the Stargate documents and everything. I read them all, and there was a person on there, famous researcher, Stephen Schwartz, and he was saying some what I felt was incorrect stuff about the CRV training, Ingo training, and SRI, and that kind of stuff. And I just used to get into these massive heated arguments trying to show him the official documents that countered those statements. And it was all statements like, and it's been in my magazine and stuff, and it's statements like, he said he talked to Ed May and Joe McMoneagle, and there's, they both adamant and there's no proof that CRV never worked, it was never finished, and all these kind of stuff. And it's all totally incorrect stuff. So I was getting in all these arguments. And then someone, because Ingo never communicated with anyone directly, because he was an older gentleman and he just didn't. Everything went through 2 or 3 different parties to do it. He had a friend contact me and say thank you for sticking up for him against people that were trying to rewrite the history of remote viewing, and it kind of just snowballed from there, really.
The internet back then was so it was very, very basic there. So not in the 90s, it's bloody
Like
hell.
even communicating with Ingo all the way back to, you know, to just before he died was hard because, you know, I'm an electronic person. I like computers. So I would send an email that would go to a third party who would then have to print that out and fax it to Ingo. And then Ingo would type a response on a typewriter, then fax that response back to the third party, who would then scan that response into me. So yeah, except for a couple of times when I had his telephone number, and the time when, you know, I went to New York and met him. So it was a very convoluted process of communication, to say the least. But that's the way he worked.
Oh no, I've got to say, hats off to you to say for a guy from the Bristol Bath area to have made that connection to the origins of this thing. Massive salute.
Well, you say, you know, you were talking earlier about being a bit of a fanboy. Imagine what it was like for me. I was like, you know, never been to America before, and luckily enough managed to get the money up to go. And, you know, I was speaking a lot to Ingo's best friend, which was Bob Durant at the time, and we were speaking about Ingo quite a lot because we both knew that his health was deteriorating badly. And he said to me, he said, look, you know, you've got an invite to come see Ingo. If you're going to do it, you better do it sooner or later. So I got the money at the go and went. But, you know, on the fanboy thing, it was the most surreal situation, you know, getting out of the taxi cab outside of Ingo's kind of flat. Well, not flat, his building. Yeah. And seeing him, you know, he was literally just sat on the front step of his building, you know, diligently waiting with a coffee and a cigar. And it's just like, that was the most surreal kind of moment in my, well, no, that wasn't the most surreal one. The most surreal moment was halfway through the day when we went for lunch. We went to the restaurant opposite Ingo's building. You're just sat there and you're thinking, oh my God, I'm sat here, you know, we're eating like chicken and chips with Ingo Swann, and it's like it's the most surreal situation. And after the meal, and I've never seen this before, but after the meal, you know, I didn't eat all my stuff, and Ingo didn't, and nor did Bob. And the waitress comes along, and Ingo was like, and it was just so funny. And he pointed at all the plates. He was like, I'll have the chips off those plates, the chicken off those plates, and all this kind of stuff. And he was pointing at all this food on all the plates, and she packaged it up, and he took it home with him. And that was just like the most surreal thing for me. I was just like, what's happening here?
Yeah, it doesn't happen in West Cornwall.
No, they eat all the fish and chips.
Dad, I was watching a tape about Ingo and how he actually found the formula for the address for CRV. Do you remember?
Yeah.
He took a bottle of scotch and floated in the pool until it came to him, right? Yeah. I thought that was the best method ever. Yeah. What do you think of that?
That's a good story. Yeah, he was trying to work out how to get a better system of getting the CRV to work. And it's a good idea. But you know, in the end, the coordinates did have flaws because, you know, some people do have eidetic memory, so they can remember places and locations from that kind of numbering system. And you know,
I thought that was brilliant. Like, you know, like that. And he was. I mean, that's so creative. It's like it looks sort of conventional, but really for him to sort of do something like that, I thought that's interesting. Like, he really followed his intuition. And
but he was a workhorse. I mean, you know, I've got some of his papers from the files from the University of West of Georgia and stuff, and he'll sit down and he'll do a project, and it'd be like, I need to work out what this project's going to do and how it's going to, you know, I need to work out what's happening here. And he would literally sit down, and over a period of 6 months, he'll do 10,000 remote viewing experiments.
Whoa!
And
that's
it's insane. I've never seen anyone work so hard to try to get at the core of some of the fundamental issues.
You know, that's funny. That's kind of how I was with the tarot cards. I just was reading them over and over and over, just like that. It was getting on that wavelength where it's like answering the phone and you hear someone's voice that you recognize. You want to get to recognize that signal.
Yeah.
And so maybe you do the repetition helps. I found I really started tuning in with the cards to the signal.
Yeah.
I don't know if that makes sense, but yeah.
But yeah, he worked. You know, when he set his mind to do something, he worked his ass off it. Not, you know, and there's many remote viewers that moan or find it hard to do a couple of practice remote viewing sessions a week. You know, you've got to put in the hours. You've got to do was it 10,000 hours to be good at something? Yeah. So yeah, he worked at it. But yeah, as I said, it was a surreal fanboy moment for me. And you know, I got my picture taken with Ingo and like, you know, you do and stuff like that. Because you have to. And he signed my penetration book as well, which is good because now the price for that's quite a lot. Anything else, or should we set that for today?
Just one question. When I saw the UFOs, I was curious about people who may have seen UFOs, whether remote viewing or in person. When I was younger, I've seen two, one of which was a cigar shape with 5 lights in the bottom of it, and it was kind of gray. The lights were kind of a cream color. And the other one, I'm still mind-boggled about this one. I saw them not close up. They were going through a hole in the clouds, and I saw it had to be hundreds of them. You could see a basic shape of them from the bottom. But this was before, these particular ones going through the clouds were before they came up with the Egyptian hieroglyphs. And it looked very similar to the one in the Egyptian hieroglyphs, or I say it. There was thousands of them that I could see crossing that opening in the clouds. And as it went on, there became more and more and more. It was like they were lined up perfectly. You could see it diagonally, straight, sideways, whatever. They were lined up perfectly and moving through the clouds. And I don't know if anybody has ever seen that, but wow, it was an experience, and no one will ever tell me they don't exist.
Yeah. I've seen similar stuff on videos in my studies. Yeah.
That's cool. Just trying to verify what I saw was real, because it wasn't USA. I lived close to Elmendorf Air Force Base in Alaska at the time, and I questioned that. And then I'm like, no, those planes are nothing like what we have. And God knows that our fleet of jets is not even as big as what I saw going through those clouds that day. And there was thousands of them.
Yep.
And wow. All right. Well, that was my final question. Thank you, Daz.
Yeah, no worries.
It's a pleasure meeting you.
Yeah, it was great chatting with you all guys tonight then. I think we'll leave it there then and meet up again next week if everyone's still locked down.
Sounds great. Thanks, Daz. Thanks, everybody.
Yeah, that was fun. Thank you, guys.
Yeah, have a good weekend, guys, and we'll speak again next week.
Lovely to
You
speak.
Thank you.
Have a good one. Thank you so much.
Take care, guys.
Thank you.
Take care, my lovely.
Bye.
Bye.
After party, anyone?